One thing that absolutely has mystified me over the past couple of years is how Bears fans actually buy into the bullshit, and that people in the Bears organization apparently buy into the bullshit that they're putting out there, that the Chicago Bears are about this close from being a championship contender in the NFC. That is such a ridiculous notion on so many different levels. But perhaps the biggest reason that it is BS on so many different levels is because of this team's organizational failures in the draft for, frankly, many years now. And in particular, over the past 3 years. When you look at the Bears' recent draft history, you only really find two big hits, if you want to call them that. A lot of misses and a lot of questions. That's not a good thing. And those questions come from failing to evaluate talent properly and failing to understand where guys are best suited to play at the NFL level. In terms of hits for the Bears in the past 3 years in the draft, you've got Alshon Jeffrey, your second round pick at wide receiver out of South Carolina in 2012. Hey, I thought the guy coming out of South Carolina had bust written all over him. In 2012, it looked like he had bust written all over him, but he got his ass in shape. And he worked hard in the offseason, clearly, and he came out and was one of the best number two wide receivers in all of the National Football League. It's a great combination to have Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. Hopefully it continues in 2014 and beyond. And then Kyle Long, their first-round pick in this past year's draft. Yeah, there was a better guard available later in the draft, but Kyle Long came in, started every game, played every snap. You have to classify that as a hit. A first-round pick that actually played like a first-round pick for the Bears. A novel concept, something that is very foreign to them over the past 2+ decades by and large. What unfortunately isn't foreign to the Bears organization over the past couple of decades are misses in the draft. They've had numerous ones over the years. In the first round, in the middle rounds, in the late rounds. It goes on and on and on. Recent misses include pretty much the entire 2011 draft. Gabe Carimi, your first-round pick, no longer with the organization. That's not good. Second-round pick, Stephen Paye, never really been anything to write home about. Third-round pick, Chris Conte. I think you clearly see this past season, especially that Green Bay game, if you didn't already know, that Conte's not good, and he's definitely not a starting caliber free safety at the National Football League level. But that's all Jerry Angelo stuff, you would say. What about Phil Emery? Well, Phil Emery's draft history is checkered, to say the very least. His 2012 draft, Brandon Harden, his third-round pick, a guy who didn't play at all at college at Oregon State in 2011 due to injury, that was a corner. Phil Emery thought, oh, my God, this guy's worth a third-round pick. He's 6'3", let's move him to safety. 2 years later, he's not with the organization anymore. Again, not good. It means you didn't properly evaluate the talent. You took a dumb chance. A dumb chance. And I told you it was a dumb chance from the very beginning. This is not second guessing. I first guessed it. I'm second guessing it and now third guessing it later. Fourth round pick, Evan Rodriguez, the tight end out of Temple, who Phil Emery insisted had Aaron Hernandez type of qualities on the football field. Well, instead of getting a pass-catching, versatile tight end, the one season he actually played for the Chicago Bears, you got a run-blocking fullback. Whoopity-doo! That was worth the fourth-round pick. Again, it comes down to this whole notion of Phil Emery, by and large, not properly evaluating talent and where they best are suited at the NFL level, and therefore not allowing that to indicate where he should take these guys. The whole structure of the Bears draft board under Phil Emery has been totally askewed and totally amiss. Think about that. Your 2011 draft, your first-round pick's no longer with the organization. Your 2012 draft, the draft that now would be entering into their third season in 2014 that you should be having stars come out of, your third-round pick's not in the fold, and your fourth-round pick's not in the fold. And then you've got questions, too. With your first-round pick in 2012, Shea McClellin, imagine that, the Bears missing again on a first-round pick. Again, it happens far too often in this organization's history. You draft a guy to be a 4-3 defensive end, clearly, apparently, not watching enough Boise State film to understand that this guy couldn't play defensive end at the NFL level. So now you're trying him out at strong side linebacker, not in the 3-4. You're not playing him outside of the 3-4, which is where he belongs. You're trying him at a 4-3 strong side linebacker. That means the guy's been a bust and you're trying to salvage it. Again, not good. Jonathan Bostic, your second-round pick in 2013. DJ Williams, missed the entire preseason. Bostic played. Mark Trestman and the coaching staff still insisted that DJ Williams start at middle linebacker for the season. That tells you something about Jonathan Bostic in the middle. And you saw it once DJ Williams went out and missed the rest of the season with injury. Jonathan Bostic took over, and very little impact. Very not good. And now you've got Phil Emery talking about, well, maybe his future is at weak side linebacker, and maybe he could be our in-house long-term replacement for Lance Briggs. What that indicates is that Phil Emery doesn't really understand how to evaluate the defensive side of the football when it comes to the NFL draft, which is incredibly concerning, but more on that in a moment. In terms of the draft picks for this organization this year, we've got a first, a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, and 2 6. So they're not in any great position of power, but at least they have a full complement of picks. They have 7 picks in the first 6 rounds. They have enough picks to improve their organization in the draft. So that's a good thing. And they're sitting right in the middle of the rounds. They kind of got hosed with their second round pick being all the way down at 51, even though they were 14 in round 1. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But then we get back to the draft strategy. And some people will sit there and say, well, clearly defense is the need. Well, yeah, clearly it's the need. It's not the only need. They need some help on the offensive side of the football too. But the problem is that I have zero confidence in Phil Emery and the Bears scouting department in their ability to properly scout and evaluate talent on the defensive side of the football when it comes to the NFL draft. And the history over the first 2 years of Phil Emery's reign as general manager play that out, which is incredibly concerning when the biggest need on your team by far in 2014's draft is needing young depth at all 3 levels of your defense, the defensive line, the linebacking core, and the secondary. That's where the emphasis is going to be. Frankly, that's where the emphasis has to be. But it's really concerning because over the past several years, this organization has spent multiple high picks on the defensive side of the football. For the past, at least, I think, 4 years, 2 of their first 3 picks, excuse me, have been on the defensive side of the football. 2 of their first 3. 2 of their first 3. Again, I emphasize that. Guys like Major Wright and Henry Melton. Then you get to 2011, Stephen Paye, Chris Conte. 2012, Shane McClellan, Brandon Harden. 2013, Jonathan Bostic, Kasim Green. 2 of their top 3 picks in each of those past several drafts have been on the defensive side of the football. And by and large, they have been failures. Excuse me. And now Melton has gone out of the organization, one of your rare successes. So this is a team that has actually emphasized the defense a lot over the years in the draft. And yet here we are, after a historically bad Bears defense in 2013, this organization is in a position where they have to address the defensive side of the ball early and often in the 2014 NFL draft. I don't know about anybody else, but that's incredibly disconcerting and incredibly worrisome to me, because their recent history indicates that they aren't drafting well on the defensive side of the ball, hence why they find themselves in the position where they have to draft so heavily on the defensive side of the ball that it could end up being a not very productive draft for the Bears in 2014. If you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And what I've learned from the Bears' recent history is they've invested a lot of draft picks and energy onto the defensive side of the football, and you saw what we got in 2013. That's not good, which makes me wonder if Phil Emery is an okay evaluator of talent on the offensive side of the football, but is a terrible evaluator on the defensive side of the football, and ultimately makes you wonder, with an offensive-minded head coach and Mark Trestman in the fold, it's not really going to make up for Emery's clear deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball in terms of evaluating talents and scouting, just how bad this draft could be and how detrimental and dangerous it could be for the Bears organization, both in the short term and the long term. In terms of the team needs, again, they need help on defense on all 3 sides of the ball, or all 3 facets of the defense, excuse me. Defensive line, in particular defensive tackle, that is the number 1 glaring weakness. I pray to God Aaron Donald's going to be there at number 14, but I don't think he is. And I doubt that the Bears would have enough balls to sit there and trade up 2 or 3 picks to make sure that they get their guy. He's a perfect fit for what they want to do on defense, and he's got that type of upside to be a big-time impact defensive tackle in the middle of that defense for a decade. So, of course, the Bears wouldn't want to move up 3 picks to make sure they got him, because it might cost them, oh my God, a 4th-round pick that they would just botch and butcher anyways. They have a huge need at safety, so if they can't get Aaron Donald, a guy like Clinton Dix or Calvin Pryor might fit the bill at number 14. The problem is that the Bears don't place a lot of emphasis as an organization and a lot of value in the safety position. Hence the free agent signings of guys like M.D. Jennings and Ryan Mundy. You're trying to replace Chris Conte and Major Wright, potentially, with Ryan Mundy and M.D. Jennings. Oh, God. The Bears have loved to spend third or fourth round picks on safeties over the years, and they've seen how it's gone. So maybe this is the year they finally realize that, hey, we need to address safety with the first round pick, and maybe with the second round pick. But I'll believe it when I see it. And even if they did address it early, they'd probably get it wrong. And the problem is that this is not a particularly good safety class after you get past maybe the first 4 or 5 safeties. So if they want to address safety, it's going to have to happen in the first 2 rounds. Again, I just don't trust them to do that. Corners in need. Yeah, you got Jennings in the fold. You got Peanuts still in the fold for at least another year. But they need another young corner that could potentially step in on the opposite side of Tim Jennings because Peanut's not going to play forever. And at pick 14, if he's there, somebody like a Justin Gilbert would make a lot of sense in part 2 because he could defend out of the slot as a rookie and he could also bring a lot of value as a kick and punt returner, something the Bears need after Devin Hester was allowed to go to Atlanta via free agency. They still need to find that middle linebacker. For so many years, the organization's identity on the defensive side of the ball has been the middle linebacker position. How much longer are you going to be able to trot out DJ Williams as your middle linebacker? Jonathan Bostic, to me, clearly proved that he's not going to be the long-term answer at middle linebacker, so that's still a need. You could argue that a long-term replacement for Lance Briggs at weak side linebacker is still a need. Even with Bostic in the fold, you could argue that strong side linebacker is still a need. They have needs everywhere. Everywhere on defense. And they've invested so many high picks in recent years on the defensive side of the football, you ask yourself, why the hell do you have so many needs there? Even after spending all the money you did in free agency, you still have needs on the defensive side of the ball. That's how bad it is. And the problem is that they have needs on the offensive side of the ball too. You know, in any particular order. They need a slot receiver. They need a quick twitch type of vertical threat, go over the middle, Azahir Hakeem, you know, to go a little bit older school here, type of slot receiver, something they don't have in the fold. Even if you say, well, Marcus Wilson could be their number 3 wide receiver. He's very similar to Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. Where's that complementary type of guy? Don't you say somebody like a Dominic Hixon or I'll come across this computer and slap the piss out of your mouth. It's terrible. Where's that slot guy that could also double as an impact player in the return game? Again, they need somebody in that return game. And a guy in a draft filled with these smaller, quick twitch athletes that could play in the slot at wide receiver and could also bring you an impact in the return game. The Bears have to address that position at some point. They're going to need a young running back to complement Matt Forte now that Michael Bush is gone. They need a young quarterback that they could potentially sit there and groom to be Jerry Cutler's heir apparent. But again, I don't know if they're going to be able to address all of these things in one draft with only 7 picks when they have so many clear and present needs on the defensive side of the football. It'll be very interesting to see what the Chicago Bears do in this 2014 NFL draft. Because if they go mostly defense and they don't hit big, this is going to be a team that will win 6 or 7 games in 2014, and it's only going to get worse from there. If they go mostly defense and they find some stars, they hit on those picks, this is a team that could win maybe 10 games and be a playoff contender and get themselves back into a position where maybe they are a little bit closer to being a championship contender. I guess we'll see, but if you're asking me if I have a lot of confidence right now in Phil Emery and his ability to draft on the defensive side of the football, hell no, I don't. And don't sit there and call me a hater. The only thing I'm hating on is the history, and the history clearly indicates that there's something to be concerned about here.